Have you ever heard about the kid that stole watches working as a janitor at the airport, grew almost a foot after graduating high school, and then became one of the wildest NBA champions? Buckle up. This is Dennis Rodman's crazy journey. And I promise you, it's crazier than you think. But first, let's spin this.
Pistons rookie forward Dennis Rodman.
Very engaging young man, very polite with people, and he's kind of innocent and childlike in so many ways.
A player who nightly racks up 20 rebound games, but Rodman's biggest asset is his unbridled, unmatched enthusiasm.
He's short for the game. They said he never balled. He was stealing watches. He hit rock bottom. He had nothing at all. But the fire in his eyes, yeah, burned through the night. He went from zero to a hero. Now he's taking flight. He drew a foot.
The greatest rebounder at his position ever.
I'd say in terms of modern era rebounders, he's absolutely the best.
Dennis Rodman's focus has been a question.
He's a rebound king, yeah, he's on in the paint.
You never really know what's on his mind, you never know what he's thinking.
You are really hurting.
She's breaking the mold. Legends media weird, telling the story Untold.
Real problem. Is it possible that we've seen the last of Dennis Rodman?
The rebel, the one who can code.
You gotta go out there and kick somebody.
This doesn't kiss my ass. I don't even know what they think about me.
It's
always a reason to my madness. Always. You don't understand though. I'm not crazy. I know exactly what's going on.
Dennis Keith Rodman was born on May 13th, 1961, in Trenton, New Jersey. His father, Philander Rodman Jr., served in the U.S. Air Force and even fought in the Vietnam War. But while Dennis was still young, his dad left the family and moved to the Philippines. Over the years, Philander claimed he had 26, maybe even 28 kids beyond Dennis. Dennis, however, says it's closer to 47. Could you imagine? Either way, his dad was never really around. That left his mom, Shirley, to raise Dennis and his two older sisters, Deborah and Kim. To keep food on the table, Shirley juggled up to 4 different jobs at once. Money was tight, and the family ended up in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, Texas, which was considered one of the city's rougher neighborhoods at the time. Dennis was shy, quiet, and often felt invisible next to Deborah and Kim. Both stood about 6 feet tall and were basketball stars. Deborah played for the legendary Louisiana Tech women's program, winning 2 national titles, while Kim played at SFA University. Dennis felt out of place. He was small, only 5 foot 6 inches. That kept him on the bench or getting cut from the South Oak Cliff High School basketball team. He could barely make the basketball team, and his sisters were heavily being scouted and recruited to play college ball. Imagine loving a sport more than anything, but no coach believes you're good enough to play. His mom nicknamed him the Worm because of how he wiggled while playing pinball, but he also felt like an outsider in his own home. He once said he felt overwhelmed by the all-female household and that his mom seemed more interested in his sister's success. His dad didn't want him, no coaches believed in him, and his own mom was more interested in his sisters. That could make for a difficult upbringing. He found work as a janitor at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. Then came a moment he'd regret. He stole watches from a store inside the airport, got caught, and ended up arrested. It was a low point that nearly defined his future.
Hey, you. Yeah, no, you. You want one of my amazing watches? I'll give you one if you promise to be my friend forever.
I didn't steal them. No, I bought these legit. What makes you think I stole these? No, I promise I didn't steal them. Let's paint a quick picture. Dennis Rodman is about 19 or 20 years old, mopping floors at the Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Airport during the graveyard shift. He's already felt rejected by coaches and overshadowed by his superstar sisters. He's hungry for one thing: acceptance. So when he spots some luxury watches in a shop display, he comes up with a plan. He snatches them unknowingly right in front of the security cameras and hands them out like party favors. hoping a shiny gift will make people finally see him. It's not about the money, it's about belonging. He ends up in a cold, lonely jail cell. The watches were recovered, the charges were dropped, but the damage, well, it was already done. He was humiliated, he was scared, and he was still alone. In a later interview, Rodman admits, "He just wanted people to like me." It's a heartbreaking snapshot of a kid who felt tossed aside by his own father, brushed off by his high school coaches, and left craving a simple, "I'm proud of you." Little did he know, this desperate act would be just one small chapter in a life that would explode far beyond anyone's expectations. So how does a shy, undersized kid, overlooked by coaches and overshadowed by his superstar sisters, become one of the most outrageous and unstoppable forces in NBA history? Hang on, because we are just getting started. Dennis Rodman's life took a sudden turn when, over just a few years, he rocketed from 5'11" to nearly 6'7". That kind of growth spurt would throw anyone off balance. But for Rodman, it did more than stretch his limbs. It opened up new possibilities. A kid who had felt overlooked and undersized suddenly had the frame to compete in basketball on a whole new level. And with that extra height came a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, his dreams of playing the game he loved could finally become a reality. A family friend noticed Dennis's potential and tipped off the head coach at Cook County College in Gainesville, Texas, now North Central Texas College. They brought him in for just one semester. He wowed people by averaging 17.6 points and 13.3 rebounds per game. Unfortunately, his classes didn't go so well. He flunked out and had to leave. For a moment, it felt like another door slammed in his face. Come on, man. How many chances does a guy need? Dennis began wondering if his dream was slipping away. Then came Southeastern Oklahoma State University, an NAIA program where Dennis could truly shine. He was hungry to prove himself, and oh, did he deliver. Across 3 seasons, 1983 to 1986, he averaged 25.7 points and 15.7 rebounds, led the NAIA in rebounding twice, and earned NAIA All-American honors 3 times. In 1986, he dropped 46 points in an NAIA semifinal game, tied a tournament record by snatching 32 rebounds, and helped his team finish ranked number 3 in the nation, still the highest in school history. Those heroics got him an invite to the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, a big-time showcase for NBA hopefuls. Dennis didn't just show up. He walked away with most valuable player honors, grabbing the attention of the Detroit Pistons. Suddenly, the shy kid who once got cut from his high school team was on the brink of the NBA. During his time at Southeastern Oklahoma, Dennis also worked at a youth basketball camp. That's where he met Byron Rich, a 13-year-old who was shy and withdrawn for a terrible hunting accident where he took the life of his best friend. The two clicked instantly.
Well, Brian, he kept telling me that he had this real nice friend, and he told me that he didn't smoke or drink.
Byron's family was weary at first. They weren't used to having a 22-year-old black man around. But they soon saw how much Dennis helped Byron come out of his shell. The Riches took him in like one of their own, sharing their rural Oklahoma life. For a while, Dennis got the acceptance he'd been chasing, but as with many things in his life, it didn't last. In 2013, Byron's mother allegedly used a racial slur against Rodman. That ended their relationship for good. Dennis was hurt, betrayed, and decided to cut his ties. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? The identity challenges are starting to make sense now. When the Detroit Pistons drafted Dennis Rodman with the 27th overall pick in the 1986 NBA draft, nobody expected much from the lanky kid out of southeastern Oklahoma. He was joining a rugged squad coached by Chuck Daly, featuring Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and big men like Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn. They called this crew the Bad Boys. For a reason, they played tough, physical basketball that left opponents bruised and frustrated. At first, Rodman just seemed happy to be on the NBA court, but behind scenes, something else was happening. The shy kid from Oak Cliff was starting to find a new identity. Rodman fit the Pistons' hard-nosed style right away. In his rookie year, he averaged 6.5 points and 4.7 rebounds off the bench, earning praise for his gritty defense.
Man, what a great effort for the ball.
During the 1987 playoffs, Detroit ran into their longtime rivals, the Boston Celtics, in a brutal 7-game series. Rodman butted heads literally with Dennis Johnson, even taunting him in the closing seconds of a tough loss. Then came the headline-grabbing moment. Rodman said this about Bird.
Bird was the god in the NBA. You know, he's like the great white hope. And I said, if Larry was a black guy, he'd just be a regular basketball player. And I didn't realize what I said, you know.
Stirring up controversy across the league, the media slammed him, but Rodman never backed down. You could see his rebellious streak starting to shine, even if he wasn't the loudest Piston just yet. The next season, Dennis improved his play, posting 11.6 points and 8.7 rebounds per game. The Pistons fought their way to the NBA Finals, but lost a grueling 7-game series to the Los Angeles Lakers. Rodman nearly grabbed a crucial rebound that might have turned the tide in Game 6, but it slipped away. It was a crushing moment. The Pistons refused to fold. By 88-89 season, Rodman was racking up 9 points and 9.4 boards in more minutes, especially after Detroit traded away Adrian Dantley. The Pistons, still wearing their bad boys moniker like a badge, finally conquered the Boston Celtics and beat a young Michael Jordan in the process before sweeping the Lakers in the 1989 NBA Finals. Dennis battled back spasms, but still tore down 19 boards in Game 3, helping Detroit claim its first championship. He was no longer just a role player, he was a vital piece of a title team. Meanwhile, that quiet undercurrent of rebellion kept growing. Losing Rick Mahorn in the expansion draft could have hurt Detroit's spirits, but Rodman stepped in seamlessly. In the 89-90 season, he averaged 8.8 points and 9.7 rebounds, snagged the league's best field goal percentage, and won his first NBA Defensive Player of the Year award. The Pistons won a second straight championship, this time over Clyde the Glide's Portland Trail Blazers. On the court, Rodman was all hustle and heart. Off the court, he was beginning to stand out with his blunt opinions and intense attitude. The bad boy aura was setting in. By the 91-92 season, Rodman's defensive powers were off the charts. He exploded for 18.7 rebounds per game, leading the league for the first of 7 straight rebounding titles. He made the All-NBA team and guarded everyone from guards to centers, like a one-man wrecking crew. But as his star rose, the Pistons declined. Hall of Fame coach Chuck Daly, whom Rodman viewed as a father figure, resigned in 1992, and the team slid in the standings. Off the court, Rodman's marriage to Annie Bakes, mother of his daughter Alexis, fell apart, leaving him devastated. Then came the breaking point. In 1993, worn out by losing and personal struggles, Rodman drove to the Palace of Auburn Hills late one night with a loaded gun in his truck. He later wrote that he considered ending his life right there. Eventually, before harming himself, he fell asleep. He was found by the police, who had been called to perform a welfare check. That's when the idea hit him. He decided to kill the version of himself he hated. He realized if he was going to keep living, he had to do it on his own terms. With that decision, his rebellious streak fully took over. Before the next season, he demanded a trade. The Pistons shipped him to the San Antonio Spurs. The Worm arrived in Detroit as a shy, scrappy defender. He left with 2 rings, a Defensive Player of the Year award, and a new bad boy identity that would only get louder. So what happens when you put an unleashed Dennis Rodman in Texas? Well, let's dig in.
Good move inside.
When the Detroit Pistons traded Dennis to the San Antonio Spurs in 1993, most fans assumed the NBA's fiercest rebounder would just keep racking up boards in a new uniform. But stepping into Texas also meant stepping into a world far different from Detroit's bad boys. While the Pistons thrived on rough play and swagger, the Spurs were anchored by the calm, disciplined presence of all-star David Robinson. Alongside steady talents like Del Ellis, Willie Anderson, and Vinny Del Negro, the plan sounded simple on paper. Pair Robinson's shot blocking and scoring with Rodman's unstoppable hustle and unlimited rebounds, and watch the wins roll in. Yet for the Worm, fresh off killing the part of him he didn't like, this move was never going to be just about basketball. It was a chance to unleash the real Dennis Rodman that had been held back for years. San Antonio moved Rodman to power forward. He rewarded them with a jaw-dropping 17.3 rebounds per game, earning his third straight rebounding title and another all-defensive team call-up. But anyone expecting a toned-down version of Dennis quickly realized that was never going to happen. Before his first game, he shaved his head and dyed his hair blonde. He followed that up by stints with red, purple, and blue, a look inspired from the film Demolition Man. He got into it with anyone on the floor who tried to test him. He even headbutted Stacey King.
He pushes back. Now what are they going to call? A double foul? Probably, yeah. Oh, Stacey went at him that time. He's out. There it is. There it is. There's the headbutt. Yeah. That's what threw him, yeah.
And John Stockton racked up technical fouls and once refused to leave the court after being ejected. Off the hardwood, the headlines got even bigger when rumors spread about his high-profile affair with Madonna. Inside the locker room, most of his teammates weren't sure what to make of him, except for backup center Jack Haley, who somehow earned Rodman's trust by refusing to judge him. That connection might have given Dennis a brief sense of belonging, but it didn't help San Antonio in the playoffs. Despite piling up 55 wins in the regular season, the Spurs fizzled out against the Utah Jazz in just 4 games. For every towering rebound and flashy hairstyle, there was an unmistakable sense that Rodman was done pretending to be anyone but himself. He'd step into the spotlight as the Worm, and he had no plans to dial it back. The Spurs headed into the 94-95 season riding high on hopes of a deeper playoff run. But for Rodman, the drama was just getting started. Almost immediately, he clashed with team's front office, picking up early suspension, disappearing on November 11th, and earning yet another suspension by December 7th. By the time he returned on December 10th, he had already missed 19 games. Once Dennis finally got back on the floor, he was exactly who the Spurs expected, a rebounding machine. Even after suffering a shoulder separation in a motorcycle accident, he managed to grab 823 rebounds in just 49 games. That snuck him over the 800 rebound minimum to qualify for another league title on the glass, his 4th straight, pulling down a staggering 16.8 boards per game. He also locked in an all-NBA team selection, proving that no matter how many off-court stunts he pulled, his on-court brilliance was impossible to ignore. In fact, the Spurs won 62 games that year, looking like legitimate contenders. Until the playoffs during a second-round matchup with the Los Angeles Lakers, Rodman was suspended again for insubordination. Cameras caught him sitting on the floor during a timeout, shoes off, refusing to join the huddle. Like, just, chilling, sitting there with his shoes off. Somehow, San Antonio still pushed through to the Western Conference Finals, facing the defending champs, the Houston Rockets. Most pundits expected David Robinson and Rodman to slow down Akeem Olajuwon, but the dream was unstoppable, averaging over 35 points a game in the series. Frustrated by what he saw as bad coaching, Rodman publicly blasted coach Bob Hill, claiming they played like it was Minnesota in the middle of December. He even accused Robinson of freezing up in the big moments and called out GM Greg Popovich in a furious locker room tirade, saying the entire organization sucked. The Spurs fell to Houston in 6 games, a series Rodman believed they could have and should have won. When critics asked about his never-ending list of transgressions, Dennis stood by his lifestyle. He insisted he was living life on his own terms, famously telling anyone who didn't like it to kiss my. Fans and teammates were left torn between admiration for Rodman's superhuman rebounding and the exhaustion from the consistent drama. By the end of that series, it was clear the relationship between Rodman and the Spurs was shattered beyond repair. Dennis had shown the world that he could still dominate the boards, but he was also making it crystal clear he played by his own rules, and nothing and no one would change that. If you're a GM, do you still take a chance on bringing in Rodman? You'll get unlimited rebounds, but the drama could rip your team apart. What do you...
Legend community presence. The warm, the climb to the top. This is the story of the tap. They slept on the kid, now they're watching it all. Dennis Rodman, the legend, the one they never saw.
To rebound, yeah, he's still in the paint. 5 rims on his hand, while the thing on the paint. Colorful head. Dennis Rodman! Legend median, we're doing the story.
Dennis Rodman, the legend, the one who rose higher. The one who rose higher. The one who rose higher.
Before we get to the next part of the video, I gotta tell you about these jerseys. Super cheap and super high quality. I have a link in the video description below where you can get yourself one of these. When I say cheap, I mean super cheap. When I say high quality, stitching, high quality, check that out. All of the labeling, we got NFL, basketball, anything, any player, any team, any jersey you can think of, they probably have it. So check out the link in the video description below. All right, let's get back to Dennis Rodman. When the Worm arrived in Chicago just before the 95-96 season, fans and analysts alike shook their heads. The Bulls had traded center Will Perdue for a 34-year-old bad boy forward who'd clashed with almost everyone in his previous stops. But Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen both knew how much they needed Rodman's relentless rebounding and intimidation factor to reign their championship edge. From the start, Rodman showed flashes of the unique blend of chaos and brilliance he'd bring to the Bulls. Unable to wear his old number 10, which was retired for Bob Love, and blocked from wearing 01 by the league, he chose the number 91. 9 plus 1 equals 10. So Rodman still got what he wanted. The subtle nod was just the beginning of his creative approach to basketball in the Windy City. Under Phil Jackson's unconventional yet empowering coaching style, Rodman found a system that let him be himself, on and off the court. Despite early calf problems, he averaged around 5 to 6 points and nearly 15 rebounds per game, locking down another rebounding title. In fact, he helped the Bulls to an NBA best 72-10 record, a mark that shattered league history at the time. And on January 16th, 1996, the game against the Sixers, he even recorded his first and only triple-double, piling up 10 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists. Of course, the off-court stories were almost bigger than what had happened on the hardwood. There was the infamous wedding dress incident when he wore white to promote his autobiography and declared he was marrying himself.
What? What the f?
I can still remember myself sitting on the couch as a 12-year-old when that story first came across ESPN. I asked my dad, what the heck is going on? I'm not going to share my dad's response with you guys right now. Rumors of a high-profile relationship with Madonna kept him in the tabloids, while trips to Las Vegas in the middle of the season caused headaches for team management. It wasn't uncommon for Michael Jordan to physically grab Rodman's temples, stare into his eyes, and demand that he focus. An approach that somehow worked because Dennis respected MJ's leadership. Meanwhile, Scottie Pippen later joked in his book that you never knew which Rodman you'd get. The man who seemed out of his mind, or the fierce competitor who'd scrap for every rebound as if his life depended on it. When the 1996 playoffs arrived, the Bulls needed Dennis to rise to the occasion. They met the Seattle Supersonics in the NBA Finals, and Rodman delivered by grabbing multiple games with his hustle, defense, and trademark ability to irritate opponents. In Game 2, he pulled down 20 rebounds. 11 of them offensive, tying an NBA Finals record. In Game 6, he snagged 19 more boards and scored a few surprising points in a crucial fourth quarter run. Even opposing coach George Karl admitted that the Sonics' 2 toughest losses were entirely Rodman's doing. The Bulls ended up winning the series in 6, giving Jordan his 4th ring and Rodman his 4th as well. Suddenly, that bad boy gamble looked genius. By the 96-97 season, Rodman led the league in rebounding yet again, but his antics only grew more unpredictable. In one outrageous moment, he kicked a courtside cameraman in the groin after he tripped over him, leading to an 11-game suspension and a massive fine. He also headbutted a referee in a separate incident, racked up heavy fines for criticizing Utah fans, and seemed to live in a constant storm of controversy. Still, when the Bulls battled the Utah Jazz in the 1997 finals, Rodman did enough to help them secure another title, their 5th overall, and Rodman his 4th. By the start of the 97-98 season, Jordan was 35, Rodman 37, yet the Bulls remained favorites, with Rodman snatching a jaw-dropping 15 rebounds a night for his 7th consecutive rebounding crown. The wild Vegas trips continued, as did bizarre stunts like skipping a team practice during the finals to wrestle with Hulk Hogan on WCW television. Rather than blasting Rodman publicly, Phil Jackson took a calmer approach, believing that if Dennis got to blow off steam, he would give the Bulls everything once he stepped on the court. Sure enough, Game 4 of that final saw him lock down the Jazz's front court, helping Chicago to another key win. All of this led to a final showdown in Game 6, when Jordan famously hit the last-second shot over Brian Russell. The Bulls claimed their 6th championship and Dennis's 5th, an essential piece of Chicago's 2nd three. Not really important or part of this story at all, but I'm dying to know what you think. Did Jordan push off? Not long after, the entire team dissolved. Jordan retired again. Pippen was traded and Rodman was released, putting an end to the iconic dynasty. To this day, fans debate whether the Bulls could have reached the same height without Rodman's fierce rebounding and in-your-face style. His on-court stats from those 3 championship seasons, around 5.2 points, 15.3 rebounds, and a couple assists per game, reveal how crucial he was to Chicago's success. Even if he wasn't scoring like Jordan or Pippen, Rodman's theatrics often pushed boundaries that no other NBA superstar would dare cross. But his passion and determination were never a doubt. As Scottie Pippen once said, one day, Dennis acted like he belonged in an asylum, and the next, he was the ultimate warrior chasing down loose balls. Whichever version showed up, the Bulls found a way to make it work. And in the end, it brought them 3 more banners in the rafters. And that might be Rodman's greatest legacy with the Bulls, the perfect storm of chaos and chemistry, proving that sometimes the biggest gambles pay off in the largest dividends. After all, no Dennis, no rings wasn't just a catchy phrase, it was the truth behind one of the greatest teams in NBA history. After winning his 5th ring with the Chicago Bulls, most people assumed Dennis Rodman's wild basketball story had reached its grand finale. But in 1999, with his sister acting as his agent, Dennis signed on with the Los Angeles Lakers to finish out the lockout-shortened season. In just 23 games, he put up only 2 points a night, but still ripped down 11 rebounds on average, enough to tease that the worm could still devour the glass. Even if his scoring was practically non-existent, the Lakers eventually parted ways with him, and Rodman was once again looking for his next stop.
Good rebound, good outlet pass.
He found it in Dallas during the 1999-2000 campaign, returning to his hometown at age 38 on a team led by a young Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki. Rodman tried to bring his rebounding magic back, averaging a solid 14.3 boards per game in just 12 contests. But he clashed with team officials, surprise, surprise, piled up technicals and ejections, and seemed uninterested in the franchise's long-term goals. Nash would later say Rodman never wanted to be a Maverick. After less than a month, Dallas cut him, leaving Dennis without an NBA home. While many believed Rodman's playing days were done, he refused to leave the game quietly. Over the next few years, he popped up in the American Basketball Association suiting up for teams like the Long Beach Jam, the Orange County Crush, and the Tijuana Dragons. His name still drew a crowd, especially when he helped the Jam capture an ABA championship in their debut season. He held out hope that someone in the NBA might come calling. That never happened, but he did venture overseas, logging short stints with the, I am so sorry, Firuza Regia in Mexico, and even playing in Finland and in the UK. In each place, he brought the same fierce rebounding spirit along with a dash of showmanship that put fans in the seats. You ever wonder what kind of player Rodman could have been if he put 100% effort into his basketball career? It's important to be yourself, I get it. With the colorful hair, tattoos, piercings, and off-court antics, Rodman definitely was himself. I just always wonder if his career would have looked any differently had he worked as hard on the court and improving his game as he did finding and becoming and being himself off the court. Dennis Rodman's legacy in the NBA is practically unmatched. He's a 5-time champion, a 7-time rebounding king, and a defensive force who could shut down just about anybody from centers to point guards. Coaches trusted him to handle the opponent's best score, and he rewarded that trust with 2 Defensive Player of the Year trophies, 7 NBA All-Defensive First Team honors, and a knack for snagging every loose ball that came his way. At times, he seemed selfish about his rebounds. He'd skip out on certain defensive rotations just to position himself better for the board, but the results speak for themselves. 14 seasons, nearly 12,000 rebounds, and a place in the Hall of Fame. Yet, the worm was never consistent staying inside the lines. While most NBA players spent their offseason resting, Rodman jumped into pro wrestling, joining WCW and later making headlines along Hollywood Hulk Hogan. He waged battles in the ring with guys like Macho Man Randy Savage, and even squared off against his old NBA rival, the Mailman, Karl Malone. Beyond wrestling, he popped up in movies like Double Team and Simon Says, landing on reality TV in Celebrity Apprentice, and crashing talk shows with his outrageous opinions and ever-changing look. He even wrote multiple books, including Bad as I Wanna Be, promoting them with stunts like wearing a wedding dress and calling himself the bride. As if that weren't enough, he jumped into global politics. Rodman famously visited North Korea and called Kim Jong-un a friend for life. He tried his hand at diplomatic talks, insisting he was there to open doors between nations. Whether or not you agree with this approach, it's hard to deny he is one of the most unconventional ambassadors the sports world has ever seen. Of course, his personal life was just as stormy. He married Carmen Electra, dated Madonna, and racked up headlines with his battles against addiction, legal trouble, and family drama. Through it all, he showed flashes of genuine care. Rodman changed the game with his raw athleticism, contagious energy, and an in-your-face style that left an unforgettable mark in the NBA. By the end of his career, Dennis Rodman was a 5-time NBA champion, 7-time rebounding leader, a Hall of Famer who inspired countless players. Yes, even if they wanted to copy his hustle more than his hair color, he taught us that being different isn't a curse. It can be the thing that sets you apart from the crowd. If you ever feel like you didn't fit, maybe the worm story can remind you that sometimes the weird kid ends up hosting all the trophies. All right, legend, you made it to the end of Dennis Rodman's wild ride. But if you're hungry for another mind-blowing basketball story, you've got to check out my next video on Allen Iverson, another unstoppable force who changed the league forever. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So go ahead, click that next video, and I'll see you over there.